Welcome to The Delineation, an astrology show with Cam White.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to The Delineation. This is now episode, I believe, 7 of The Delineation, and today's episode is actually a conversation between me and an astrologer named Cameron Allen. I have been a big fan of Cameron for a while. We talked a little bit about this right at the beginning of the show about when we met or when we first connected, but yeah, Cameron Allen's an astrologer, herbalist. I believe he's a yoga teacher too. Really amazing guy. I started following him on Twitter, and that's what kind of originally made me a fan of him. He has such a unique perspective, such a holistic perspective, I think, on both astrology and health and just life in general. His story is really interesting. He has a lot to teach. I'm such a, every time he talks, I'm like, he's one of those people, every time he says something, you're just whoa, I didn't think of it that way. Or that's such a, it really does make you think. It really does make you see a different perspective. Something that's super funny about also me and Cameron, besides the fact that we both have the same name, we're both Sag risings, and it's super funny. He's a Jupiter in Cancer, and I'm a Jupiter in Capricorn, so he's much more, if you guys, listen to me, I'm a very pragmatic, person. He's also very pragmatic. He's got a whole Capricorn stellium. He's so serious, super grounded in reality, but his Jupiter in Cancer, to combat mine, and he has such a literal, I guess the best word for it, such a spiritual way of looking at life. And he just shares a lot of his insight. I kind of talk a little bit how he got into astrology, and like I said before, I like having these more casual conversations with astrologers, not necessarily focused on something, but just kind of talking about the stuff in general. You know what I mean? It's a fun way to kind of talk about astrology. And we go over deconditioning in this episode, which he has a lot of really insightful ideas about. It's a big part of his practice too. And herbalism too. I don't know anything about herbalism. It's one of those things I need to keep getting into, and I'll probably hit him up for that. But yeah, it's a really good conversation. Check out his Twitter at CADream7, or his website too. It's cadreamplanet.com. He's got a bunch of different offerings, from consultations to astro herbal consultations. Really neat guy. I really hope you guys enjoy this conversation. So with that being said, I'm excited to talk to you today. I remember we met before NORWAC. Did we talk before NORWAC, or was our first interaction at NORWAC?
We had talked back and forth a little bit because I went to Denver one time, and we tried to connect, but we missed, and then we met at NORWAC in person. That's when we really connected.
Yeah. That's right. I remember now. Okay, but we never actually had. NORWAC was a long time ago.
Yeah,
I don't
remember so long.
Did we ever actually have a one-on-one or a talk? I don't remember. I think we were with this. I just remember being with the Stoners. And
yeah, right.
Being in the mix.
That's what it was for sure. Yeah, it was a lot of shaking and moving. So yeah, there was never a sit down full one-on-one. But I didn't have that many sit down one-on-ones with anybody really, because it was just everybody together.
Oh yeah, that's true. That was the whole kind of thing. But yeah, well, yeah. So my first question for you is, how did you get into astrology? Who are you? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, so they know who we're talking to here.
Yeah, totally. So my name is Cameron Allen, and the way I got into astrology, I tell so many renditions of this story, but the one I'll tell this time is I was working at a spiritual supply store, and I just started asking people what do you know about astrology? What do you know about astrology? Because it piqued my interest because I was starting my practice in herbalism in the spiritual supply store, and so I was making little just looking at plant books when it comes to magic, and seeing planet correspondences. So that's what actually drew me to trying to look into astrology at all. And no one had the answer. And we had some books we had some books at the shop, and where I was at in that time, in that space and time, I was reading some of the books, and I would just be like, no, this isn't it. And I would just read another book, and I'd be like, no, this isn't it. And then I would always talk to people, and they would point me to books, and I would be like, that's not it. And they would be like, how do you know it's it? Not it if you're like, how are you going to like, how are you going in to try to learn astrology, and you're saying that's not it? And I was like, I don't know, I just know. And that's just like where yeah, and like that's where I was at with a lot of things in my life at that point in time. Because I was working at, like, before I started working at a spiritual supply store, I was working at a facility for youth, for like behavior, like youth that have like behavioral issues. And I ended up like getting fired from that job randomly, and just like, and I had just so happened to put in an application at this spiritual supply store like 3 weeks before that. So literally the day that I got fired from the other job, 3 hours after I started the spiritual supply store, or like I got hired at the spiritual supply store. Anyway, that's a digression, but that's just where I was at in my life. I was just like, I don't know, I just know, and I just kept doing that over and over again until one day I was drinking some tea, and it was a passion flower, and it told me to go to Oregon, and I didn't know what the hell that meant. So the next morning I woke up, and on Facebook, the first thing I saw was the Lost Renaissance Medicine Conference in Portland, Oregon, Judith Hill. And then the person I started listening to a little bit, his name's Sage Popham, School of Evolutionary Herbalism. That's where I learned some stuff. So a lot of stuff, not some stuff, a lot of stuff. But so yeah, I went to Oregon. The first astrologer I met was Gemini Brett there. And then from there,
I love him.
Yeah, and from there I just went down the rabbit hole. Yeah, full throttle.
There's a lot I want to dissect, like, because a lot of that piques my curiosity. But why were you into herbalism in the first place? Like, what got you into that? Because you sound like, I mean, you're talking about relating, planets to, plants. And I know a lot of people in the spiritual community end up finding their way, through that. How did you originally get into herbalism? And I mean, but I also want to pick up on your point too, about knowing that wasn't right, and knowing that there was more, because there's something that, we'll pick that up in a second. I want to ask, how did you find herbalism, or why did you find herbalism?
Yeah, at first it was a very superficial version of it, or my superficial version of it, I'll say, because when I was in college, I tore my ACL. And so I started just like looking up like all the different ways that you can heal. And I ended up taking an internship around the University of Florida for physical therapy for a summer. And I was just working with Ayurvedic herbs to heal my leg, and really just, I mean, it was to heal my leg and to get buff again. It wasn't like actually like holistic or anything back then. It was more like, take this for that, like very symptom based kind of entry levels, superficial kind of way going about it. And so I did that. And so I started taking herbs in general, like a little bit here and there. And during college, instead of like taking extra protein, I would like take herbs. Right. So, but then when I went into the spiritual supply store, there was a whole ass herb room there. And so all the time, it's just like people coming in, and I would just be like, well, what are you taking that for? What are you taking that for? And over time, I just started getting to learn it in that way. And then I started a practice of every single day when I got off work, I would drink a tea, and I would go in my bathroom, turn the lights off, put in headphones, and just drink a tea and just listen. And then I would do that for a while, and then I would read about the plant. Because I would never read about the plant first. I would ask questions, I would drink the tea, and then I would go read about it.
So you let the plant give you the experience.
Definitely. Yeah.
Wow.
So I would notice certain things, and so that even like evolved into, I would be in the herb room and I would be talking to somebody, and I would feel a feeling in my body that went with the specific plant, because I was already carrying that plant's medicine. And I would be like, oh, this person needs this plant. And so that developed over time. And there was a lot of, because I'm very skeptical in a lot of ways, even though like where I'm at right now, one would probably never think that I'm skeptical about anything, but like,
being in astrology and skeptical is kind of like they kind of go against each other, right?
Right. And like the whole like Reiki and crystals and all this other type stuff. So like people automatically would think I'm not skeptical, but I was super skeptical, but like I just had to keep leaning into it, because the person I was working with, my teacher, she worked with like shamans in Peru. And so she would just be like, lean into that. And I would just always like read on the plants that I was like getting these feelings for, so that I would at least know how to be like, hey, like I would invite you to try it like this or try it like that. And from there, I just started reading books and just like working with the plants. And then I studied a course called Botanical Constellations, which literally just took me through the whole zodiac 1 year.
Ooh.
And I was learning just based off seasons. So the first 2 years of
Wow,
astrology pretty much
you learned
weren't.
a good way then.
Yeah, because a lot of it was like not based on like, because people would be like, even when I first started getting in more like talking to other astrologers, people would be like, oh yeah, because Leos are like this, and I would just be like, I don't have no fucking clue what you're talking about. Like didn't get it, because I was just like, oh, I thought that meant they were just like, I was like, oh, that's when the flowers, all the flowers are opening, and like like
because you came at it from a completely like adjacent angle than
Mhm.
most people. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
funny. Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming then since you were tuning into, that's such a cool way of tuning into plants. Cause I'm not like that. I'm such like I don't know what you would call it, the way I would be like, I'd much more read about the plant, take it and see how I'd feel. And I'd probably not notice anything either, but like, that's
Mhm.
interesting how you got into that. But I'm assuming then picking up on astrology was relatively like almost second nature, easy then, right?
Yeah, and I had a framework that I was given that just it plugs into anything in the reality, essentially. Like the floaty idea that people have that like quote unquote like everything is everything. Well, like my teacher gave me a framework that was like, no, sit down. Everything is everything. Let me show you what I mean by that. And he just started giving me a framework to where like you can pick up anything, you could bring anyone in front of me, and I will break down how everything is everything within their sense of being, essentially. And so that's the framework that I brought into astrology. So a lot of times when even talking about astrology, I had this other framework. All astrologers bring their beliefs or the other things that they already had to it. And I had this framework that literally it goes into astrology so perfectly, like the houses. It like even I've done a lecture recently over a holistic view of the houses, and I like take this framework and I like show it, not from a traditional or like a historical perspective, but just from the perspective of this is the template of everything in reality. And if you look at everything in reality from this lens, then you can be able to label things and also drop your labels in any moment. So, yeah.
Being able to use it as like an identifier.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, it's just like it makes it very clear that like this is the construct that I use. What construct do you use? Instead of people being like, no, this is that, blah, blah, quack,
Yeah.
quack. And I'm just like, cool, like I can drop mine and I'll just use yours for now then.
Yeah. Well, like that's something that like, I would say that I don't judge astrologers in the sense of maybe how they look at, well, not how they look at a planet. I judge astrologers based off like their metaphysics. You know what I mean? Some people have a very a really cool, either unique or or metaphysics or a worldview that really like works. And then you kind of see things that are like, people try to fit something like astrology into a box or into, a certain way or certain order versus it's like, well, no, this is all, everything's everything. It's just, how do we kind of, interpret that, right? What is our own unique, take on that? No, I really like how you kind of went about that. So, wow. Okay. I didn't know you got into it straight through herbalism. So you said that you were reading books and you were like, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. So you're a Sag rising. We could speak as Sag rising to Sag rising here. You get that sweet in that little subtle intuition. Well, also too, I just looked at your Twitter bio. I forgot you have like a whole Capricorn sun, because I know you have Jupiter and Cancer in the 8th, and I know that we have the opposite that, but I totally forgot you got a whole bunch of Capricorn placements too, so that makes sense about the skepticism. But I guess so I'm curious as to your opinions on that little voice or that intuition that was having you read those books or their sources, then that told you that was like, that's not right, or that's not enough. What about it was that? Because that's something I think I had a similar experience too. Well, that was the hard part a few years about getting into astrology. It was like you're hungry for it, but where do you find it? And like finding the good stuff, feeling like, oh, finally here's something else. And it was just that surface stuff, not that depth stuff. Right. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's pretty much what it was. We talk about personalities and ideas, and I already have a psychology degree, and I was already working with youth. So I was always in my teacher always just like, well, what's behind that? Like no matter what, when I first started learning, both of the teachers I was learning from, they would always say like what's behind the veil. That's what one of my teachers said. And the other one would literally just be like, well, what's behind that? And when I would read the books, I would never feel what's behind that. I would just hear what is the appearance of it. And appearances aren't true. What's behind the appearance is true. So I would say like these aren't right. These aren't right. And it's interesting because some of those books that I said these aren't right, these aren't right, they were right. They were just on the surface and appearance, and I came back to them later.
Yeah, no, that's something I've noticed too. The more and more I get into my studies, the more and more I kind of go back to those, even like those entry level books. And I reread it again, and I'm like, they're kind of saying something. It's super funny. I kind of I kind of lost my mind for a second because I was reading Dorotheus, and I don't remember if he was speaking about if it was health astrology or not, but he brought up the 12-letter alphabet. It was like the first thing he said. And I was like, hold on. Like, wait a second, where is this coming from? And then it's just, then you kind of like look back at everything. And then, it's interesting how much you can learn from the surface, but it's super interesting getting into it, knowing that that's not everything that's there, knowing that there's a little bit more into it.
Yeah. And it was always interesting too, is just even speaking about the 12-letter alphabet, because from a medical astrology perspective, that is used like actually very often, but just like in a specific like manner, So I always have been taught, you always need a context for the content, right?
Yes.
So for me, it's like I've been taught specifically how to have an orientation towards information that allows me to, no matter what somebody says, I can take bits and pieces of it and interject it into anything that it fits into. Just inherently, like I have that lens to be able to do that, which is not something that people have ever been promoted to really do.
Nope.
Two, it's not something that everybody can do with my Gemini moon ass.
Well, that's another reason why I really want to talk to you, because you're such a big promoter on like free thinking and think for yourself, which I think is just like so important. I think not only in this day and age, but I mean, with astrology too, I think one of the beautiful things astrology just enhances like the unique individual to such a intense way. But man, God, what did you just say that I wanted to pick up on? You said about what did you say about the 12 houses or about the 12-letter alphabet?
Oh, the medical astrology, or in like being able to context for the content.
Context for the content, and then right after that, what did you say?
I don't know.
Fuck, you said something really golden there. I'm so sorry, I can't remember what I had. You're hitting on a lot.
I think I said something about like medical. Yeah, no, it's. I said something about medical astrology and how like it's a specific way that you use it. It's like there's just a specific way you use it. That's what I was saying, I think. But I talk really quickly sometimes. So
no, you're talking to a Sag rising, Mars, Venus, Gemini. I usually go a million miles an hour. One of the hard things for me doing this podcast, like especially talking with people, is keeping the same thing, because I can go, here, go there, go a million miles an hour with the conversation. But yeah, so you're seeing the same thing, that everyone else seeing when it comes to astrology getting bigger. I think eventually I'll find my way back to that question I want to ask you. But one of the things I really want to talk about, or use, I guess, this podcast / show to kind of talk about really, is how astrology is getting more and more popular, how people are using it. And I want to ask, what are your opinions on, because again, one of the things, like, I know one of the things it seems like, think of ourselves using astrology. How do you kind of uniquely use astrology on your own, besides just the herbalism? I guess, where do you kind of see astrology's uses being promoted?
Yeah. So, right now, right now I'm writing an article. I write monthly articles for Yoga Journal. So that's one way that I've been working with it, just writing articles to share with people the energies that are coming up, and also like yoga practices that correspond with these energies, no matter how perceptive, like something can be difficult or hard, like something can be easy or hard, but it's like, to me, I'm always like, it's very simple that this energy is coming, and these are practices that you can do to unite with these, or also to combat these. Right. So that's one way of doing it. It's just like everybody says, not everybody, but a lot of people, it's just like knowing the weather in like dressing appropriately for that weather, that's a big way. That's a big key factor. But where I'm from and where I live right now, Memphis, Tennessee, mostly it's just like getting people to understand themselves. You know, in the Black community here, it's really big with people to say like know thyself, and that can mean a lot of different things. And the way that I utilize it for people here is just like, because we're so conditioned, I just give people themselves back to themselves. And I'm like, yeah, this is valid. And like, keep doing that and keep doing it this way. And when you do it consciously, you don't have to go through this bullshit over here, and you can keep it moving and you can feel empowered in yourself. So that's the biggest way I use it, especially here in Memphis, Tennessee. I just use it to help people heal and help people feel whole. You know, that's the biggest thing that I do here. Even though most of my practice now has actually moved online, so a lot of that's medical astrology. Just speaking on medical astrology a little bit. For a second, I was like moving away from even calling it medical astrology, and I was calling it holistic health and astrology, because like you could be 15 minutes into a quote unquote astrology reading with Cameron, and what will happen is you will be doing a lunge and like squeezing your glutes, and like, you know, it's like it's just like this whole thing, because in this ever expanding version of what I call holistic, you know, it's just like it encompasses everything that I am aware of currently, because it will keep expanding forever and ever. So yeah, those are the main things that I do with my astrology, even though I actually have been doing a lot more elections for different businesses around Memphis, actually, and then a few things behind the scenes too. So that's been cool as well, bringing in my more traditional stuff that I've been learning the past year and a half.
Okay. Well, that's, you know, I remember what I wanted to say, and it just goes along with everything that you were saying. Something, again, that I really like about you is that you're really big on think for yourself, do your own thing. And something that I was kind of told a lot. I didn't know you had a psychology degree. That's super cool.
Yeah, psychology and health and sports science as well. I got two.
Man, all right. I didn't know any of that about you. I don't have any of the degree background, but all of my family is alcoholics, and they all went through AA, and so they have their own level of experience, right? Something that my mom says a lot that I really like using with astrology that you seem very on board with is the whole idea of like, you have a toolbox, right? Like, you know, it's about picking and choosing what tools you have. Certain tools work here, certain tools work there. You know, there's this I know a few people in the spiritual community kind of, you know, we all kind of come at it through these different angles, right? The herbalism one is a interesting story, because I only know a handful of people that have gone through it that way. But I don't know if you're familiar with any of these like personal development seminars that, you know, kind of get promoted. Well, I went through a few of them, and there's a lot of stuff in there that's kind of not always helpful, but there was something that they always referred back to, that, you know, just like what you were saying earlier, like what's behind that. And they always come back, you know, like where else does that show up in your life? Where else is this, you know, kind of coming up? And, you know, there's so many ways to take, I think, these life experiences as, you know, tools and these certain modes of healing. I really like what you said, holistic healing astrology, because that makes, you know, something that I'm starting to see so much more with astrology is the same people that are getting into, you know, the whole waking up with the sun, going to bed with the sun, and changing their diets to a natural diet. And they're going to start I feel like they're going to start really finding their way towards astrology eventually, where you're like, well, now you're getting on a more natural calendar. And you know, it's super interesting to me how, especially with yoga too, because I'm starting to go down the yoga rabbit hole, even though I've been really resistant to it for a long time. And it's just, it's interesting to me how you're kind of going about it in this way of, I don't know, you're leading people to astrology, which is a really funny way of, I think, getting people there. What are your thoughts on how astrology will play that? I mean, you seem like you kind of nodded in agreement that you think astrology will be eventually that tool that people also pick up along when, you know, what would you call the thing that's going on nowadays, where people are just starting to like make healthier choices and wake up to, like, you know, I don't even know what you would call it, but there's like this natural path, like rise or awakening. I feel like that's really starting, or at least it's been starting for a while. It's just starting to pick up momentum.
Yeah. I feel comfortable calling it like the awakening. If that, you know, even though that comes with like so many different connotations, I'm just like inviting people to even be mindful that your awareness around that word of the awakening and your resistance to it is a part of the awakening in and of itself. right? So just like inviting people into that, and whatever you want to call the quote unquote awakening, allow that to be what it is for you. And that's the word that I would use for it, because that's just what's happening. But in truth, I feel like it's really just going back to natural law, into what's like just natural, really. It's like, it's interesting because where I live, it's just, it's to me, it's really, really interesting and weird that I'm considered someone who is weird in my society, because I wake up with the sun, and like my biggest meal is going to be when the sun is at its highest point, because that's when the highest, what they call agni, or like metabolic fire, is present, and that's considered weird. And it's just like, it actually just makes the most sense ever. And even that makes me think about the earth signs, and just like how we perceive practicality, and how the majority of the way our society is ran is actually not practical at all, based off of like actual reality.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would call it the awakening, and then all that tangent that I just gave to.
That's a really interesting point, a position to take, of like your reaction to that word is a part of it. I like that. It's also a little bit more, it gets you a little bit more into the experience. No, I like that. I like what you said, though, that you think that it's weird that, people like, you're the weird one for waking up with the sun, eating. Why? I guess, what point do you think? Because here's the thing, what I've really realized is, we're at this point with society where we've built up like all of these, like, what we'll say for right now, pretty much industrial capitalistic way of living, right? Which I think in the midst of, we didn't realize what we were doing. But I don't know if it's the internet or if it was whatever it was, but I feel like we're starting to just realize, like, oh, we don't have to do it. And like, none of this is natural. None of this, it's crazy how much, I was just, on my podcast, I blow up these 3 or 4 YouTube channels. It's called like Not Just Bikes, Strong Towns, and City Beautiful. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but there are these YouTube channels that talk about, city and urban planning, and how much that actually affects like your mood. And I was watching one of these videos, and the guy brought up the study that was done on just like how in a city, he was talking about how cars are actually the things that bring noise. Cities aren't noisy, it's cars that are noisy. That when you're in a more noisier environment that has like more surround sound, you're more likely to be more antisocial, stop conversations in the middle of them, like stop them shortly, not help people, not talk to strangers, and you're more likely to have anxiety, stress, and like depression, just from all of these kind of sounds. And I guess it's weird being in this position where we practice astrology, right? We not only do we kind of see that change happening, but we're also not only a part of the change happening, but we also kind of can see that roadmap of how that works, or at least of where it's going to. And I guess, I don't know, what are your opinions on when are you going to see more people wake up? Because I really like how you're positioning that, of it is because there truly is an awakening. Systems truly don't work anymore. So I guess, where do you think people are going to, or what are you excited for maybe in the future astrology of where do you think maybe that collective shift can actually start taking off more?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So the first thing I'm excited about, and one of my yoga teachers, they always talk to me about this, and it's not their main position, but it's a position that I've like begin to really observe. I think it's really going to take off when we get enough people to be into the bullshit of astrology, like the actual, like what some people would call the shit post of astrology, or like the surface level of astrology. Because just to me, just like in yoga, like people are always doing just postures when that's only one of the 8 limbs. And it's like, but like, would the West even do yoga if it wasn't this like thing that's supposed to make you fit in, maybe sexy a little bit? Like that's just the beginning of it, So getting people into like the surface level of astrology is what's going to take people into a deeper experience of astrology as well. So that's what I'm looking forward to, more people getting into that. And for me personally, I always center things around like what I can make actionable. So for me as well, it's just like meeting people at parties and people being like, I'm this, tell me what this is, blah, blah. And I'm just like, did this happen to you when you were younger? Or like something that's actually like, saying something that's like actually more like penetrating or like or inquisitive, and getting them to like take a step further into like the what's behind it.
Yeah,
Like
like actually
that's what
think
I'm looking
about
forward
things.
to.
Yes, no,
Mhm.
I see. It's super weird because like for me, people like my friends that know that I do astrology, and like let's say I go out with other friends, and then they find out I'm an astrologer, and then they ask me about it. Like some people get weird. I'm like, dude, I don't like it's not weird. Like I love talking about this shit. I will casually talk about your chart, but I love that you're like, did this happen? Just because like rather like I don't like being like when people are like, oh, guess my sign. I'm like Virgo. I'm like, okay, how old are you? What's your rising? Because we're about to go a little bit deeper than maybe you're
Yeah.
expecting right now. But like it's and I think
Yeah.
well, I also think that casual use of like rather than and you know I like that idea of like kind of getting into it for the fun sake, but I also like that you're going kind of straight, you're using the tool for what it was for, straight with that, even as like as a party gesture. I love that. That's something that
Mhm.
I'm super big about too. Like when people ask, I'm like, and you know what's super funny too is people will ask you on the surface of like, oh, you know, just to get into it, but then you start telling them about that and they're even more interested. They're like, holy
Mhm.
shit, you're fucking saying something, like tell me more.
Mhm.
Why does that resonate so much?
Right, right, totally, yeah. In my practice, actually, it pretty much began with the most minimal, like the least amount of information, right? So I was in the back of a herb room, so it wasn't like I was doing 20-minute readings. It was like, what's your sun? Everybody knows their sun. Some people knew their moon, some people knew their rising, but it's like just based off that information, I would be able to get other things as well because I was checking the pulse, I was checking their tongue, you know. So I was being able to ask them other questions. So there was like these like that I could get behind it. I could get behind like
In the
what people
scenes.
perceive as like superficial sun sign stuff. I'm like, actually, give me your sun sign, and I will go and I let's see where I can take it. If you really want to, like, if you think it's sun sign is some bullshit, like let's test that theory out because I've literally trialed and errored. Like at a certain point after I was working at the herb room for 2 or 3 years, there was literally lines of people coming in. What's your sun sign? Boom, 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 asking 3 questions, and like being able to do that at like rapid speed, it actually became something that was like really powerful.
No, that's how that's how you become a good astrologer, in my opinion. Like some of the, yeah, you know, you can read as much as you want, but like for me, I've been doing readings as much as possible since I've started, since 2016, and it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I used to work at a shop here in Vegas, and I forgot what it was. I think I maybe did a deal where I did 12 back to back, and it was like on the fly, sun, moon, rising back. And it's like your burpees, like for astrology, in my
Yeah.
opinion, where it's just
Yeah.
like, this is gonna suck, this is gonna be hard, but like after this, you just, you know, it's, I don't know how to like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy to me when astrologers will like not want to exercise that tool, but that's or at least try. But that's super cool that you were able to get a line out the door for people getting into just their sun sign.
Yeah, and the herbal room in general is just it was all the things, you know. And then even I started picking up on other patterns like, you know, very simple things. You ask somebody to see their tongue is very red, they have a bunch of Mars shit going on, right? Like this is the most
But you're
simple
looking at
basic.
people's tongues for like,
Well, I mean, I look at that from herbal consultate, like mini herbal consultations. It's just a quick indication. You know, like it's some okay. So let's say I look at somebody's tongue after I asked them what their sun sign was, and they're Aries, right? So they're already this person's an Aries. They're going to have a tendency towards the issue might be with the adrenal glands. They might have a tendency towards burnout inherently, right? This is just a tendency that might be happening. They stick out their tongue. Their tongue is red. That means something. That's Mars showing itself on their tongue. Now I got 2 hits for Mars, so that takes out all hot plants automatically. Now I have a bunch of cooling plants, maybe moistening plants, maybe
so you're
inviting them to slow down. You
so
know,
you're doing
and
it
it's
with
just
temperament theory essentially.
yeah, and it just weaves through everything. Everything has that. You know, even the way the person talks. Like I would for weeks just do elements of people's voices. Like that would be my practice. So I'm like, what element would somebody be based off their voice and their posture and how they carry themselves? And the more and more I did that, that just became my mode of perception and reality in and of itself.
Wow. Okay. So then where does astrology fit in that framework besides just, you know, associating like a plant with the planet or, you know, a symptom with the planet? Like, do you see, like, are you seeing that in people's like ascendants or their sixth houses? Like, what's
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
there?
Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So from just like medical astrology perspective, yeah,
Well,
you.
I mean, even both medical astrology, but also just like where else you could allude with that?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, you can check in people's pulses. That's one thing. But also just, yeah, I feel like the way people present themselves in general also will, I guess the way I even think of it now since I've started practicing horror is like when something one comes to you, there will be a planetary force that they're like bringing with you with themselves, you know, just they're just bringing that force. And based off of that, yeah, it's just literally the pattern comes in. It's just like data points will come in, you know, so I'm like pulse, tongue, the way that they speak, the way that they carry themselves, like the issue, like if I say something about their mother or their father, the one that they pick, you know, or is it their other relationship? How, and then maybe if somebody will come up and they were felt Venusian to me, I might be like, just randomly while I'm like picking up herbs for somebody else, I might be like, "How have your relationships been?" Right? And then they're like, "How'd you know to ask?" Like they're like, "How'd you know to ask that?" You know, they're just like, "How do you know to ask that?" And I'm just like, I don't know. I just know. And then they go down this rabbit hole of like the relationship thing, you know?
That's
And
very
so
nice.
it was very intuitive. And then it just became, it was intuitive. And then I just got so many data points that it was just like actually very concrete. And I could just like reach for information as I went and continue to be intuitive. But like really, it's just like I can see the patterns.
How did you get so in touch with your intuition? Because
Practice.
you seem to, well, where did that practice come? Where did you go? Where did it fucking click for you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when I was younger, my dad taught me a lot about discipline, and I ran all the fuck away from it because the way he wanted me to be disciplined was just literally just not me, not for me. So when I started tuning into different energies and feeling into things and not understanding them, I would just practice it. So it's like for days on end, like I told you about the practice that I had in my bathroom, I also would do things with crystals. Like I would pick up a crystal, feel it, and then there was at a certain point I started like asking them questions, and I would get answers and just like drop in somebody's hand, and then I would ask them what they feel, and then they would tell me the answer that I had in my head already, but I didn't say anything to them. So I wouldn't like be like, I know exactly what this is going to be. I would just feel it, ask the question, get the answer, give it to the other person, and let them teach me what I was like feeling into every day. Or not every day, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week for years on end. Like 3 years I did that. And I would just do that over and over again. Or I would, before I even started learning, like specifically like, oh, Sirius, the fixed star does this, blah, blah, blah. You know, I would take a double terminated quartz because it's supposed to transmit information both ways, point it at Sirius and just keep feeling into
Yes.
and do meditations, right?
That
Until I
was,
get information. And then
dude,
when I get the information, then I would just, yeah, I would just share it from there.
that's literally one of my favorite, like when I was at Norwalk and I saw you meditating out front of the sun, I was like, I'm gonna like that fool. Like that shit, that's so funny. Yeah, you definitely got some earth planets if you're just like holding crystals
Yeah.
and like, yeah, you're
Right, right. I'd really be like doing it's all embodied though, right? Like, cause even before I mean, even when I was working at the spiritual supply store, I was also working at a gym, like
mm,
help like doing like little personal training stuff. So it was like all of it's very embodied and it's very like, what does it feel like in my body? And like what am I hearing, even though I don't know what the hell it is that I'm really hearing. And that's okay, you know. To know
yeah,
that you don't to when it comes to intuition, to know that you don't know how you know is the first thing to know. And from
yes.
there, then you can
Oh,
actually know.
it's when you can say that one more time, when you know that you don't know that it's where it's coming from. You're
Yeah,
like, I
yeah, like when you know that you don't know where it's coming from, that is the first thing to know.
wow.
Because from there, you're not like up your own ass worrying about if you're right or wrong. It's just like you're tuning into something. And if you're the thing about it is if you're really genuine about something and you're going towards it, it will allow you access to it. And
Yes,
that's something that people just don't feel into, or people are afraid to mess up, quote unquote, or to like be wrong. And they're already wrong by doing that, essentially. Because
yes.
we never, that's how we learn.
No, I something I preach a lot about is taking the path of least resistance. I have the opposite of you. You have an exalted Jupiter, a domicile Saturn. I have a fallen Saturn and fallen Jupiter squaring each other. I've often in life taken the most resistant path and the hardest way, simply because, to prove something or, whatever. And the more and more I grow up and just live my life, especially with astrology, the more and more, and I find this in my practice too, is just teaching people how to lean into what's already natural. Like this isn't like if that same thing with that intuition, same thing with, it's rather than going against the grain and doing something that is completely counterintuitive to you in a sense that isn't necessarily growth oriented, doing something that's much more like, applicable. It's amazing how much people are, resist what they're naturally inclined to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's something that I teach all the time. In studying Ayurveda, they have something called the Prakriti and the Vikruti. So the Prakriti is like someone's essential nature. It's like what they were and what they had when they came here. And then the Vikruti is like how they've been conditioned over time and what has life done to you, type of thing, essentially. So a lot of times I just take people back and I'm like, how were you when you were young? Or like, let's say I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, oh, like, are you assertive or not assertive? Whatever the question is. And they're like, no, I'm not. And I'm like, were you when you were a child? And they're like, yeah, I was. And I'm like, do that. Like, it's just that simple. It's like you were taught not to do that because of this. And, that was another big thing that I took up when I was learning astrology, because I learned it in the back of an herb room. For the most part, it was like deconditioning the social norms around things. It's like, just to tell a Cancer, like, be emotional. So what? Like, just learn how to ride the wave. Like, do it first, though. You got to do it first.
Yeah, it's telling people to be themselves is groundbreaking news sometimes, which is it's like I tell people when it's like with like the Leo placements, especially with all this Aquarius stuff, it's like, this is showtime. Like, you got to be a Leo. Why would you be given these planets? Why would you be given these feelings for you to not act on them, for you to not embrace them? Why would you be given a unique identity for you to not be that, person? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And oftentimes I just tell people, when you're in the deconditioning process, it might come out sideways, and just be mindful of that. Like, cool. Like you like, okay, cool. You're a Leo. You showed your shit and somebody else got upset. Like, you can either one, let them get over that themselves, or two, you can tell them, hey, like, I'm working on this in myself. So like, I might've went overboard there. I might've been a little dramatic there, and just own it. Like, because when you're repressed, like, sometimes when you are finally being able to express yourself, the poison has to come out that was pushed down in you, it's whatever, and it's about orientation to me, but yeah, definitely giving people permission to just tap into their essential nature is, that's what I really love to do. And I'm really fucking good at being able to see like the essence of things. So just like being able to get people to express their essence is like what I'm really fucking good at that. Even like meeting a new plant, like, I can just really hone in on what the essence of that thing is, from a really really quickly. So yeah.
So do you try to do that through like multiple different ways, or are you like someone that's like for example, do you just give people like a plant to work with to do something? Or because for example, I get the question a lot with my readings of like, what's my purpose or what's my job, like what kind of career. And for me, I don't always like answering that. It's like, well, sometimes you could see someone's midheaven placement and they do that for a job. Like, you see that. And I've seen other charts where their whole chart really describes the job really well. Or, sometimes I've heard people do a job. I'm like, it's like some, retail job or some job that's like one off that really kind of does, it seems like maybe even like part, like, impartial for them at that moment. And to me, I always like to say, the chart's going to like look a lot of different ways. So I guess when it comes to, you said something about, giving someone a plant, letting that essence come alive. Where do you like to place that besides plants? Where do you like to see that essence come alive? Do you like challenge people to like do shit, or is this like a
Yeah, I do challenge people to do shit very often. That's one of my big things. And even when I say challenge, the word that I utilize is invite, and what I'm really doing is challenging them to do it. But I'm making it very much softer, and I'm being mindful of my Saturnian nature and me thinking that I'm right all the time, because I know I'm not right all the time. I'm just right a high percentage of the times, it feels like, at this point, so it's very chill for me, but for other people it doesn't always come across the greatest. But again, going back to like context for the content, what is the person asking of me in the session? That's the first thing I always take into account, because I have astro herbal sessions, right? So if somebody comes for that, then I'm definitely going to invite them into working with certain plants. But sometimes when I'm getting into talking to people, we go to a specific area of the chart. In that area of the chart will represent a body part that they've had a struggle with, that goes with an emotional issue they've been struggling with, that goes with a mental framework that needs to be rewired, and then and how they express themselves in that area of life. So oftentimes I just give it full stop. I just really, it's really holistic, and I'm like, if you work on these 4 things or these 5 things, and we're really talking about one planet in one house in one sign, and now you have 5 things to work on: physical,
mm,
emotional, mental, maybe spiritual or movement practice, or something like, or even breathing exercise. And I'm like, that is the space, and the 5th thing is the 5th element, which is ether. And I bring that in because that's the space of what's happening with all these things. No matter how it's manifesting, it's always in this one area, this one space. So that's how I tend to go about it. But now, like I'm saying, people are like, when should I start my business? And then we just fucking do the
yeah,
chart.
yeah, and yeah, we just
Yeah.
and end up just doing like an election or like,
Yeah.
it's super funny. Something I've been kind of joking about is like sometimes with my clients, it's like when they'll kind of ask me like some questions like, oh, like I want to do this, I want to do that, and I'm like, I'm not. It's like, well, all that stuff that your intuition's already leading to is probably true. I'm just here to tell you when. Like I'm just trying to
Mhm,
tell you when all
mhm.
of that's gonna like come to fruition, like the exact way that you're thinking. It's so
Right,
much
exactly.
of like, again, it's super funny. A lot of the times I feel like a park ranger, like, and I just help people like on a trail. I'm like, you're on the right path, just keep going. Or like,
Mhm.
you do know it's like midnight and you're going like to a trail that maybe is like, gonna lead to some danger.
Right. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, in 2 hours the mosquitoes will be over there, so you might want to come another day.
Right.
And that
Well,
just like might be a job they want to quit or something, like that type of thing. That's what it feels like for me.
so where do you see astrology kind of going in this future? In this future, do you think? Because I'm kind of in this camp of, and I rep things a little hard only because I'm trying to normalize astrology. Like a lot of my tweets are straw man arguments simply because no one's fucking asking my opinion. But like I'm kind of over in this camp of like, I think there's a future where more people of schedules can be much more, I think, coincided with astrology. I think it's relatively easy enough to do. But I think there's a future. I think the future of astrology is really, really broad in terms of its use. But my question for you is, where do you see its use going? Or where are you excited to see that turn into?
Yeah, I'm excited to see people in Memphis implement it into their like teaching their children when they're growing up. And that does look like, so the framework that I keep talking about too is like everything starts with one thing. So it's like, let's start with a zodiac sign. Let's say Cancer, right? It's Cancer, whatever. So that's one thing, and so then you break off the one thing into whether that's active or passive, right? So that one's an active sign, and then you like teach a child that everything, day, night, masculine, feminine, yin, yang, blah blah blah. You just teach them that. That's super simple. And then I even use that in like the human anatomy, which would be the 2 biggest things in the human anatomy from my lens that I use and orient myself to: the nervous system, the lymphatic system, right?
Mm.
And the nervous system being the more active, and the lymphatic system being more passive, right? So you teach a child just that, and they have a shit ton to work with there, you know?
Yeah, you're teaching them to tune in, to like and check into what they're actually feeling. It's super crazy. I think that's one of the craziest things about getting into astrology. And even getting I've been really getting into nutrition and diet for a long time now, because
Hmm.
it's insane how much you're told to legitimately like ignore your body, and
Yeah.
and how, and ignore also just like basic intuition, like natural, just human. It's like, it's not even common sense. It's just like natural human intuition. And it's crazy too, how, you know, that's crazy. Just what I feel like a kid can be kind of taught. And I was going to ask you about that, since do you still do work with kids, and do you do any astrology work around with that?
I've actually recently I did like a whole series with the Astrology Hub called the Seeds of Light, and I was doing each zodiac sign and like how to like be helpful to your children for that. And since then, I've been doing a lot more readings for parents with their children and helping them orient towards like, this is how we hold space for this chart, you know, just like hold this space rather than, oh, I already see they have this like inclination that blah, 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 you know, it's like, this is how we hold that. And then also like being able to identify the patterns in the child's chart that coincide with the parent's chart.
Ooh.
So that they don't project onto them too hard and their fears and stuff like that, you know. And it's been stupendous, honestly. And don't use that word lightly. And then also, like going back to just like kids in Memphis and just, working with parents, because the parents are the ones that work with the kids. Mm-hmm. And that's more where I'm more moving towards now. Even in Memphis right now, like I'm working more with the people who work with the people instead of like me being like 5 days a week with everybody in the community. Yeah. So that's where I see it. That's where I can see it blossoming forth. That's where I would desire it to go, because sometimes I'm just like, people who are old, like they're just conditioned, and you know, Saturn crystallizes things. I don't really want to play with that shit. Like I'd rather help create space for new things to come through. And so I'm not even really worrying about that. I'm putting my energy over here.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're super plugged into the community. That's super, super cool that you're doing it so locally. No, I feel you doing. I've been lately doing more kids charts with their parents, and it's really rewarding, because it's such a different conversation to have. You know what I mean? But that's interesting where you kind of talk about it with parents. I'm sure. What you said you said you did a lecture, you said Star Seeds?
Yeah, Seeds of Light with Astrology Hub.
Like,
yeah.
Astrology Hub. Okay, where can I find that? Because I know people listening to this will want to hear that. Where could they find that?
Yeah, you can go on YouTube and type in Astrology Hub, Seeds of Light, Cameron Allen, and then it'll pop up. Yeah, it'll pop up there.
Well,
there's 12 of them at least.
That leads me to one of my next questions, because you also do what's it called? What is the thing you do with Kelsey? The rising hangouts?
Oh, ascendant assemblies.
Assemblies. Yes. How have you been doing that? I'm, as a typical Sag rising, I haven't shown up yet. How is that going? Because I also want to ask you too, because Kelsey got me into this. I met up with Kelsey not that long ago, and she showed me my human design, and I was skeptical about human design for a long time. I had an ex-girlfriend talk about it, and just what I'd hear, I was just like, what the, like, I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. Like, I was like, I don't think you know what you're talking about. It's okay though. But then Kelsey is like, I mean, she kind of threw a lot at me, and I wasn't expecting human design to be so astrologically integrated. Like it is real, and you're a really big person on that. What's your opinions and thoughts on that, and where that's going with astrology? Because that's something I didn't realize. How I was like, oh, this is actually like a thing.
Yeah. And there's somebody named Simon Vorster. He uses the human design with the astrology in his like forecast, and he does it like absolute justice. But for me, you know, I just really just stick with the basics of human design, you know, whether somebody's, you know, there's these 4 types, or you could consider 5, I guess. It's like generator, projector, reflector, manifester, and then manifesting generator. And then you got these profiles. That's really where I stick at, because just that in and of itself, if you give that to somebody, it takes them like 6 months to a year to decondition themselves from what they thought they knew. From there, so I haven't even dove all the way into the astrology of it, to be honest. And really? It could be, it could be integrated in a really profound way. But really, all like when I do tap into it, you literally look at like, so I've done it for a few like full moons and new moons and like different, because I do stuff locally too, as far as like new moons, full moons, workshops, stuff like that, and at a yoga studio. And sometimes I will pull the channel. They're called channels in human design. And wherever the full moon or new moon is hitting a channel in human design, that channel's activated for the collective. So if you know what that channel is about, then you can just essentially be like, look out for this type of thing.
What do you mean activated for the collective? Like
Got you. So there's channels in like, so there's a thing called a body graph in human design, and it has all these numbers, and each number is a channel. And if a full moon or a new moon lands into a specific channel, then that channel
for a specific person, or is it just for a channel, that channel for every person?
Yeah, everybody has that channel in them, right? But everybody doesn't have it painted in the same way or colored in the same way. Everybody's going to experience the full moon in Aquarius, and that's different in their chart, and it's interacting with different things in their chart, and that would be the same for that channel.
Got it.
Right? It's interacting with different things, and Kelsey would explain it better, and she would do it more justice. But that's essentially what it is.
Okay, yeah,
that's how I would use it. I would just like look at what channel it was activating, and I would just talk about a theme or a topic that comes up with that channel, and get people to tune into it. So then a week later or 2 weeks later, they're like, "Oh yeah, this came up," and I was on it real quick through the awareness that this was going to be coming up.
So you've said something a few times now that has caught my attention, but you keep mentioning deconditioning, and like you have that already as like, that's like number one, as like that's already a laid out thing in your head. Yeah. So so that's clearly something that you like to target. That's where did your deconditioning process start, and why do you get into that? Because that's a fun road to go down with people.
Yeah. So, and also like from a psychological level, most of my astrology originated with evolutionary astrology.
Okay.
Right. With Jeffrey Wolf Green.
Mm-hmm.
And Aquarius represents deconditioning, and I have and then Capricorn represents conditioning, or like things being crystallized. So having awareness around like having the sun conjunct North Node in Aquarius is just like, I am the deconditioner. And I realized too, over time, I would do that inherently in my life. Like, it's funny. Okay, so in my old athlete self, like people that would be cool with, they would act a certain way, and I'll be like, "You don't act like that. You ain't built like that, bro. Like that ain't really you." And I'm gonna show you that ain't you. Like, condition your ass. Like, and I would just do that to people. I would just basically call their shit, But really, what I wanted to do was like break that conditioning that they were like trying to like hold, But taking a step back, the real answer is there was this one night before a football game in college, and I took some shrooms on the football field, and I was like all into Carl Jung and alchemy back then, and it just came to me, and it was like, for the next 7 years, decondition yourself. That's just what I heard. And since that day, I was just deconditioning myself, and over time, I just started realizing all the conditioning patterns that we have in the reality. And when I say all, obviously not all, but all the conditioning patterns that we have, and just literally just throwing lightning bolts at them hoes, basically at them hoes.
So wait, you're a sun on North Node in Aquarius?
Mm-hmm.
What degree?
My sun's at 15 degrees exactly, and then my North Node's at 16 degrees.
Okay. So you're born during eclipse now. I didn't even know you're Aquarius sun. I didn't even fucking think about that. Mm-hmm. Damn, that's crazy. No, I feel that a lot with the deconditioning and the Aquarius stuff. I've noticed so much of what Jupiter Saturn conjoining in Aquarius has been for a lot of people has been deconditioning. They're coming off of like a high. Something that I've been getting really into the like the low carb stuff. And for me, a lot of that experience has been almost like coming off of like a food high. I was you actually talked to Sabrina a lot, because I want to have Sabrina here, because she made a tweet that blew my mind. She's like, she said something. She said, I changed my relationship to food by stopping looking for it for pleasure. And I was like, whoa, like that. For one, I just fucking love people who are ruled by Jupiter. But two, that was just a mind-blowing concept and idea. But there's this sense, there's this, I've just noticed lately, I mean, with a lot of things, it's almost like coming off a high when you do that deconditioning. You start realizing like how much of it was like a system that was perpetuated onto you. It wasn't necessarily what's also really weird too is when you realize that you were caught up in that, and you're like, oh, I was in that, like that was me. Like there's this almost like slight cringe factor to it almost, but then there's this sense of like, oh well, can't blame, that's just how the fucking system is. But
Definitely.
yeah, the not decentralization. That's also been stuck in my head too with the Aquarius stuff. Because everything just seems to be in the power of people's hands with the internet. But what did you not decentralized
Deconditioning.
deconditioning some of
Yeah,
this.
totally.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed so much, especially just with people in general, like deconditioning from, I don't know, I feel like ever since January or even Jupiter and Pisces, there's been this sort of like where people were super stoked last year and everyone was kind of like on this high. It's kind of like the caffeine wore off and there's this kind of like, okay, like things are like, what do we do now that the caffeine's not kicked in and now that we're not lost in the noise of everything.
Yeah. No, that's so true. That's so true. Ooh, there's so much to say around that. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that is true. And I would just invite people to even decondition from what they think they're deconditioning from as well. Because that high that people get, or that caffeine, is actually not all the way sustainable for a lot of people. And so they gotta figure that out on some level.
That's been my big thing because I'm all fire and air except my Jupiter and Capricorn is like the thing barely holding my chart together, giving it Enneagram. So I got a problem now drinking coffee and energy drinks. I try to really slow my energy down, and it's very difficult. And it's what's super hard about living in this system is that what I've also noticed too, just with the Pluto stuff, and this is going to come up again too. I've been trying to tell this with my clients with like the Venus retrograde at the end of the year. It's just been like, nothing might even happen, but like the fear is just going to be stoked because I've been thinking a lot about like Pluto and Pluto transits being at the very minimum, just fear, just absolute like fear of the worst, fear of anything happening. And it's like there's this, I don't know. It's that's what's frustrating. I think being alive is how stoked everyone is on not only is mostly fear, but on so many other things. And it's just kind of like, you probably could relate to this more than I can because you seem like someone who's probably much healthier than me, much more active than me, but in the sense of like coming off of the caffeine or coming off like of a sugar high, where you kind of look at everyone like, oh, it's like all just junk, hyped up off of fear, hyped up off of conditioning, right? Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I'm sure I'm sure you know what I mean.
Yeah, nah, I'm with you. Yeah, it's concerning to me. And even sometimes, like, I do this thing on Twitter where like 3 months ahead of time I like say something about like a planetary node and to check your adrenal glands in your nervous system. And if people who follow me, like, they can see, like, every few months I'm like, what I really care about is your nervous system. What I really care about is your adrenal gland. Because it's like I can see when the spikes are coming, and it's just like, please don't get high off of this like thing that's coming, because the drop off is actually a leak of your energy that you think that you're putting towards this gracious cause, and you don't have the sustainability to do it because you're so amped up, and then you just drop off. Like, and I continuously see it, and I even have seen it in my own community. Like, the people who were like fighting so hard for certain things, it's like, yes, fight hard, but fight smart, and also know what you're doing and know what it's doing to your body. And yeah, so I'm just so about that, like, just being really mindful around, and also even how you react and respond to things, especially online.
Oh yeah. Well, that's at this point, I think what's especially online, I think it's a little bit harder because it's so designed around reaction, and it's so when you're warped in it all day, it's super easy to fall in line with that. But I think what's super funny is that your idea of deconditioning also falls in line with sustainability. And that's something that
Oh
I've
yeah.
noticed more and more. It's like when you actually take off that lens of like how things are supposed to be, you end up focusing your mode on sustainability. Like that's something
Mhm.
along the lines of like my diet, my schedule, everything. That has been number one priority for me, is like, what is actually sustainable? What is something that can last and I can do, and that is simple and that is easy and that I don't have to overthink and that is natural and intuitive. And it's so funny how both of those things of like deconditioning and sustainability kind of literally kind of come hand in hand.
Right, yeah. It's monumental. And throwing ideas around out on Twitter is just like way less sustainable than going down the street and learning the plants in your local environment, or like helping people around you that you actually have to be in connection with. Like that's just so much more sustainable, and people just, oftentimes just don't take that route, and I just don't get it. I really don't. I don't get it. But like I was saying, like I came from working at a herb shop, so like that's just my orientation. And I
What?
also feel like sometimes people like I'm just thinking about like online and how people get hyped up around things. I'm just like, well, where is your community at in person? Like,
Oh, that's something I've talked to people about, where people are like, I think a lot of the loudest voices online are people that aren't going to show up to conferences. They're not going to show up to their local astrology meetup. And it's a huge difference about people that there's people that are online, and then there's people that are doing like astrology. So and there's people who are doing both, but there's definitely I really believe there's kind of a discrepancy with the online and the real world. And I think that's something you're going to see more and more of, especially as we open back up. And because there's such hostility online on the Twitter community a lot of the times. And I always wonder, I'm like, what is this? We're all going to come back and hang out one day. Like, what are we like? Are you guys going to like, you're going to be in the same room one day. How are we going to act then? Is it still going to be the same? Or like,
I still look forward to it.
I do too, because the thing is, to me, I think something with the astrology community too is that there's no like healthy debates. It's either everyone is wrong, or it's the sense of like, we could disagree. There's so like, and that's one thing with the astrology community, like we could all disagree on stuff, but we all need to come together as astrologers. Like it cracks me up how there's people in this astrology community that are trying to like talk shit on astrology in general. I'm like, whose side are you on? Like, I thought like, shouldn't we all be on the same page here of like liking astrology? But no, I think, I think a lot about also too, this is something as a content creator, I was just telling, someone about this, they were focusing a lot of their content on Instagram rather than like doing like a podcast or something. And I'm like, you can do that, but like what's sustainable? Like same thing with like tweets. Why like my tweets are always just, I kind of just throw shit out there. I see you do that too. I always love your tweets because you write them like a fucking haiku sometimes. You're like intro, thought, closing. Like, and I'm like, like it's a full, you don't leave any cliffhangers, which I appreciate. But Twitter's good for throwing out, just throwing an argument out there. And it's not good for counter arguing, which people who counter argue, I don't know why they waste their time there. But I see so many people pour their work into stuff that like Twitter or Instagram, where it's like, dude, the algorithm's going to trash that. No one is ever that amount of effort that you put into this. Where does that come back into your life? And also like, the anger that people show too online, it's like, where else does that show up in your life? Where else are you, holding this hostility and this, kind of rage? And it's super funny too, within the astrology community, when I see that, it's like, aren't we supposed to be giving a good impression? Like, aren't we supposed to be like spiritual teachers in some sense? You know what I mean? And I'm a big, you're talking to like a Saturn and Aries, Mars and Gemini. I'm a big person, like, again, fights. Like, oh yeah, I'm all about it. But also, there's such a difference between sustainability and, what changes, I'm a big person. Like I'm a big climate person. I don't like saying climate change person because there's just so much hostility and fear that's brought around that. But like, a lot of people think like electric cars will solve the problem. It's like, dude, the whole infrastructure, how everything's set up, it's designed, like I tweet about this all the time. It's like designed around cars. So when you talk about, what people are like, for example, like, when people get really excited about like, oh, we're going to do no, like, I think Canada's like not selling gasoline cars anymore. It's like, it doesn't matter. If you're going to do, if you're going to put in all this effort for something that is surface level, same thing with, even a lot of the reactionary stuff on Twitter. It's like, if you actually want the change, you'll see people. I think there's people that are actually going down the right road, that are actually kind of taking on that initiative. And as a Leo, the way I always like to say, like, leaders just act by example. Like they lead by example too. And the other thing is, leaders always replace themselves, right? So there's always going to be this kind of like, you'll see people going down the right road and other people are going to follow that too. And I think you'll see more and more of that. But I am curious as to the in-person stuff that people get into online, because I do think a lot of astrology, what we see online, is not transmutable to in person and to in reality. It is not there's just no way it's that real. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It doesn't feel that way to me. I could be wrong, but it just doesn't feel. Yeah, just I just can't feel it. Like even sometimes when people, because I could feel like hostility from certain places online, even just being like energetically tapped in on that level, on a different level. Honestly, it feels like it's just like I know like when I see people in public, like I'm going to smile at them, I'm going to say hey to them, and they're going to be fine about like they're going to be fine, right? And it's just weird that it has to be that way online. It's interesting to me too, you know, especially as I get into more like community spaces or spaces of groups of people. Is I tend to like smaller groups of people to
Mm-hmm.
like connect with, and so I have a bunch of different just groups of people that I talk to that are in the astrology community, or like over at Michael A. Bryan's Oraculos school, we have like a little horary group that I meet up with, and then I have like an astrology accountability group with a few people,
Oh,
and
that's
then there's
super
like
cool.
yeah, so I have like 5 or 6 different little places where I just go and like meet up with people, and I'm like in commune, because this is what I always say. I'm like, first you have to actually commune before you can become a community, you know?
Yes, because well, this is I think I was talking to Drew about this. Of the we keep saying astrology community. It's like what community? Like we
Right,
keep we
right.
keep putting a label on something that doesn't exist.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how I see it, you know. And sometimes too, I would even get myself into hot shit because people would get upset, and I'm like, why are you upset? There was nothing happening here to begin with. Why are you upset? Why are you wanting people to take accountability who aren't actually in this group? This thing isn't even a thing yet. Like we need to create the thing first, you know, but
Mhm. No, I get myself into trouble all the time online, and I
yeah.
try. I mean, I. But the other thing is, sometimes what I hate about online is sometimes you'll just get into it and you don't even realize you're like, I got like sucked into that. But then, and that's how I see with other people too. It's the same thing, you know, when you see someone addicted to cigarettes, it's like, well, it's designed for that. Like it's their how much control they had over that was how much awareness they had in that moment. And when you're on social media isn't a tool for self-awareness, right? It's a tool to I use it to check the fuck out. And it's funny how that does get brought up. I find it really interesting too, because in person it's all going to be good vibes, because that's the thing. For one, no one's about fighting in the astrology community. No one is like, no one ain't got balls like that, for number one. Like, and if it is, no one's actually down to go there. Someone might say something snarky, but everyone's too fucking passive to where anything would go down. It's all good vibes. It's all smiles. So again, you know, why I, you know, what, not why do we attack each other, but it's just, it's super interesting how we're all, not we, I don't even say we're all, how people are kind of positioning themselves in this like, oh, it's us versus them in astrology, when I feel like we should be all there, like we're all there for astrology. So like what us versus them is there. And I think also too, like I'm super excited for the next like UAC, when you get I didn't get to go to the last one, but when you get everyone together in a room again after, because they're really, you know, since the lockdown, I feel there's been, I mean, how long have you been on like Twitter?
I probably was on it a long time, but for the last like 2 years,
Okay.
probably
So you,
2.5 years maybe. I just once I like met people at NORAC is when I kind of started getting on and seeing what was up, and because I was interested in learning about traditional astrology, it seemed like a lot of people were there. So I would just throw out comments, check out stuff, go back and forth with people till I learned enough to like just not do it at all anymore, and just like I'm like, cool, I got enough information and data, thank you, and just like now I just do whatever and just connect with people.
yeah, well, I the astrology, there wasn't ever an astrology community on Twitter until really after Norwalk. That's when you really
Mhm.
saw it blow up. It was blowing up a little bit before that, but like I feel like all of like a lot of the public drama shit had really happened during lockdown. So there hasn't
Oh
been
yeah.
any type of reconcile, which I wonder, I keep thinking about this with Saturn and Pisces. Cause like the more I've been getting more and more clients to Saturn and Pisces, because you know their time's coming up. And
Mhm.
it's so funny to me because every Capricorn and a Saturn and a Capricorn and Saturn and Aquarius are like, discipline, rules, this is our boundaries, and they're just so stiff about it. And I swear to God, the moment Saturn enters Pisces, this is going to be like when Jupiter enters Pisces, it's going to be like this mush, and like, well, we don't have to have hard rules, and we don't have to have
Yeah.
all of these other. We could be a little bit nicer and a little bit more open and passive towards each other.
Right.
I just think also too, what I'm noticing with Aquarius is same thing with that whole idea that you're talking about with deconditioning. There's a sense of kind of like running away. I feel like the Saturn Aquarius transit is super isolating for everyone. Like everyone's kind of going out on their own and being like, you know what, let me be on my own here for kind of a minute before I kind of decide to go back to the group idea, before I kind of decide to go back to the, the collective, so to say. Like Saturn Aquarius has felt, in my opinion, more so just people in there. It's kind of like when you drive around like your hometown on like Christmas, and like everyone's just inside, like there's no cars really out or anything. I know that's kind of an analogy to like lockdown, but like I think also too, just like with their emotional energy. So I'm curious as to how that all this Aquarius stuff's going to translate into the future, especially with community stuff, especially with working with people, and whether or not that's embraced.
Yeah, no, well, where I live, it'll definitely be embraced. I already have, like, I've already done election for 2 different shops that are supposed to be opening up, and I can pretty much come and go as I please, booking with them. So I mean, I know here it'll be fine. But I live in Memphis, Tennessee, in the South, so it's like,
well, is Memphis a spiritual type town at all?
it has like a direct links with like the energy, I would say, and I don't want to disrespect Memphis, so I'm just saying that out loud because I fucks with Memphis tough. But like it kind of like you can liken it to like a smaller New Orleans vibe that people oftentimes don't know about and overlook. So it has like very like hoodoo magic orientation to it, has that flavor.
Yeah, well, I listen to a lot of Memphis rap, but I know that Memphis has a lot of other music stuff. I just never known anything. I went to Arkansas for the first time over this past summer. That was my first time actually going out anything east of like the Rockies, and I don't know, like that. The culture is really cool and just interesting over there. It's very different from the way I'm a West Coast kid. Like all I know is IE California shit. And going out there, it's different. It's cool. And I wasn't expecting so many young people to be out there. And so like the energy's there. It's just not like incorporated into like I wouldn't even say the culture. It's just not incorporated.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it still.
Like I don't see well it's the same thing with like Vegas is different. There's a bunch of spiritual shops here, but I wouldn't expect to see a spiritual shop in Memphis, Tennessee. But I would probably expect a lot of the people there to be on some shit with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there was only a few, and there's more popping up now. And with people like liberating from Bible Belt Christianity, then sometimes you just like the vacuum goes into new agey stuff. So like that's getting really big here in that way, because they're like, I'm deconditioning from Christianity, and then they go to spirituality, and then they're gonna have to learn how to decondition from that.
Yeah, I was like, you got a long way to go if you're just in Christianity. I'm like, you got like 3 more spiritual breakthroughs to happen.
Exactly. So that's what, and even like you were saying, like it's like kind of disconnected from the culture in that way. It's like it's even, you could say, like just behind, even where I went to school in Oklahoma, because I've noticed these like different patterns of behindness in different areas and pockets of the United States, and really that's what it is. It's just behind some years.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting is with the internet is seeing how behind people still are. It's just like, yeah, you go to places that are kind of like out there, not a lot of human contact, and they're all on their Facebooks and Instagram and shit like that. They're plugged in. So what's weird is seeing everyone realize all this stuff, knowing that everyone's plugged in together, and then the cognitive dissonance of like that's not matched with reality though. Well, it's like the same thing when it's the transmutation of like what is online versus what's in reality, and what part of the online world is not represented in reality that is true, and what part of the online world that's not represented in reality that is false. You know what I mean? Like you have like people thinking, just how crazy both people in both ways are going. Like it's just, insanity on both ways versus like where does it versus there's, I don't even want to say a gray area. There's clearly a line where everything kind of meets up, and I kind of see people, not realizing that there's that line. It's kind of like, same thing with, like, I tweeted about this today about, every day I go on Twitter, and of course the Twitter algorithm's geared towards me, but like you see Taurus, Scorpio, Virgo with like 30,000, 50,000 tweets and it's trending. And then you see every time there's a transit, it's trending on Twitter. And then you go like, on Tinder or Bumble, that everyone's got their big three on there. It's so culturally big. And I hear no one talking about it. Like, it's as if astrology, like if you were watching the media right now, it's as if astrology doesn't exist. But if you talk to anybody, and if you just go up to any stranger, there's a likely chance, like every time I talk to someone, that I literally, this girl asked me what my Venus sign was, and she even realized I was an astrologer. And I was like, that's kind of funny. Like, you know what I mean? It's getting to this point of where are we gonna all kind of accept like, hey, this is stuff that we all do. It's very real. And I mean, is Memphis technically part of Appalachia? The Appalachians?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's, I mean, the Appalachians, huh?
Especially East Tennessee, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm not super familiar with all that area, but I know the Appalachian folk magic is huge thing, and that I know is also getting like a whole resurgence over there too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, magic is just resurging everywhere, honestly. Yeah, for certain.
Yeah, that's been I think the most interesting thing is not only people, like, sure, people getting into spirituality and astrology, that's one thing, but I've seen a lot of people like get into some type of, you could call it whatever it is, it's magic, but some type of physical action that goes with some type of metaphysical principle. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would even just say like a return back to nature, because you gotta get earth stuff, to create anything in this reality on some level. So people going back to that, and it's just the prelude to what's next. Even if people are doing the whole like, I'm manifesting, blah, cool, do it. Like, and you'll realize where your pitfall is, and you'll realize where you're fooling yourself through time. And I'll be here waiting to help you transition from that.
See, this is why I tell everyone, I get a lot of people that really want to actually go into astrology for a profession, which I tell them, like, look, do it. If that's what you want to do. If it's not for you, you'll know. Like, know, you are going to know what's for you and what's not. It's the same thing when you hang out with a group of people, who likes you and who doesn't. It's that checking into that intuition of like, if you're just if you're reading the right signs in the room, like, you'll know if like you're on that right path. And again, I'm here that's the same thing with this whole astrology stuff and people getting mad at each other. Like, I'm here for the long run. Nothing's going away. So this idea that arguing over semantics and bullshit is one thing. We could argue over like theory and principles, or metaphysics, that's one thing. But yeah, it's like we're here for the long run. And this idea of, things being so in the moment right here, right now is, I think, kind of based off the old paradigm of, that high of the caffeine, right, versus what's sustainable. But no, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. You got me kind of thinking about a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah. So kind of to wrap this up though, I also wanted to ask about that a Senate Assembly thing. How has that been being with a group of Sag Risings? What do you call a group of Sag Risings? Is that a Congress? Is that a murder? What is that?
We haven't decided yet, but we're coming up with a name soon. So we'll let you know when we have it. But it's been amazing, and it's just.
Can you explain it too for people listening if they don't know what that is?
Yeah, totally. So essentially, what it is just a group of people with the same rising sign coming together in a specific container to share. It's really just to share, and to connect. And honestly, it's so affirming. Like, people who we actually have, like, I literally have seen people on the Sag Rising group, like, it's like I can tell that we don't have that much in common, and at the same time I'm like, we literally have everything in common. It's like they could say something and I have no clue what the topic matter is, and I'm literally nodding my head like they've been my best friend for 2 years.
Yeah, because Sag Risings are such promoters too. We're just like fucking hype up anything that you give us.
Yeah, it's just been so good. It actually blows my mind how validating just hearing other people's experience of life is, because it's literally the exact same thing I'm going through. Like it it's amazing. And I'm so thankful that we started it, and shout out to Kelsey for that. And it's just so good. Yeah. And you can follow us over at Ascendant Assemblies on Instagram and Twitter too as well. And we have a special going right now to the end of the year. But yeah, it's been going amazing, honestly. It's I love it. I just love it. I really do.
Yeah, I'll make sure I'll put it a link in the description. But you said
Mhm.
it's validating in the sense of what are you talking about? Like people all go into like what the same transits at the same time together, like the same life
Yeah.
experiences.
The same trends, but even just like describing, there was something someone said last time, and they were describing like a conversation that they had with their mom, and it was literally the same exact conversation I had with my mom. It was like, it just like it's you can't make it up. Like for me, it was just like you can't make that up. And then just having realizations with a group of people in this container, and then you take that out in the world, and it's like nothing. And this is how I really feel like it's validating. It's like I just got done talking with 12 people that just said they're going through the same exact thing as me, and now I'm going out into the world. So any reflections that I get, I'm just like, I already talked about it with these 12 with my 12 Saggies. You know what I'm saying? Like I already know this is happening. Like I can see it, and we're all going through it, and it's just
The
it's just like that kind of
the
thing.
validating factor of astrology is one of the huge reasons why I'm such an advocate for it over a lot of mostly therapy. Is it's there's nothing in my opinion that can validate like astrology can in ways that words just legitimately can't even explain.
Mhm.
That's super cool. I need to check out the Ascendant Assemblies things. I've been too satirizing about most things lately and
Yeah.
been like, oh, what? I'm gone. I'm doing something else.
Yeah, and the Instagram is ascendant dot assemblies. That's what the Instagram is. Yeah, but it's yeah, I love it so much. And we're rolling out all the groups now too. So no matter what rising sign you are, we have
Oh, like
space.
all the other signs.
Yeah, it's so all of them are being rolled out now. And so yeah, it's you can access that at ascendant dot assemblies on Instagram.
So where else can people find you and follow you and get some of your work or book a reading with you and have you read
Yes.
their tongue?
It's so funny. I love that. So most of the time I only read the tongue in person. So even though that was a joke, but like that's what I like to do. And also, if anyone's, yeah, I go to different cities sometimes, and I do readings, and those like actually can be like embodied astrology readings. So I do different types of astrology readings for people like in my city and then in person. So it could be like also combination of like energy work and astrology, or embodied astrology where we just go through your chart, and then we, either do yoga postures or pranayama practices and stuff like that as well. So just essentially saying I do way more than what my website says. So yeah, you can find me at www.cadreamplanet.com. That's my website. And you can find me at Yoga Journal, and you can just type in Cameron Allen Yoga Journal astrology. And I have not just astrology articles, but I also have some yoga articles and a few articles over herbs as well. And you can find me at like I got a lot of stuff on Astrology Hub. I have a whole course with Astrology Hub called The Health Secrets of the Zodiac. And that goes over each zodiac sign and the environment to embody the zodiac sign, and deconditioning again the zodiac sign, and the crystal that goes with the zodiac sign, and the herbs that go with the zodiac sign, and the embodiment
Ooh.
practice that goes with the zodiac sign. And then I go through physical, emotional, and spiritual essences and qualities of the signs. So it's very elaborate for a very good price there. And I'll have more courses coming out too within the next year and a half. So yeah, those are mostly places. My Instagram is CA Dream 6. My Twitter is CA Dream 7. And yeah,
What's the difference between the 6 and the 7? I don't think I follow you on Instagram.
I think somebody already had the CA Dream 6 on Twitter, or maybe I was going through some, or maybe I like found out my like I don't know my life path number or something. I don't know.
What's your life path number?
7.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't surprise me. You seem like a total 7 person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, Well, sick, man. I super appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me about everything. And yeah, with that being said, let me go ahead and end it.